I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. And as we go over how to do a novice guide to house quality, we've got Elie today, and we were going over some basics. We could. Hi, thank you. We're going to go over the do's and don'ts of QFD, conflict resolution, handoff, and applying the human element. Elie?
All right, thank you, Valorie. Good morning to everyone on the Western Hemisphere, and good evening to everyone on the Eastern Hemisphere. Thank you so much for those that are taking the time on a Friday evening to be joining us. I highly appreciate that. My name is Elie Abikhalil. I have 12 years of experience in lean manufacturing over multiple industries, almost 4 or 5 industries now. Basically, I do operations management in all of these different roles that I have taken up. Lean Six Sigma methodologies, certified in multiple different disciplines. System conversions and integrations is something of high interest to me. Definitely look at how can we put together a system from an automation standpoint, which takes me to my next point here. Automation, robotics, they kind of go hand in hand. Project management, this is something that we will be talking a lot about today. How do we look at house of quality from a project management standpoint? And then I do my own coaching and mentorship through EAK Consulting and the collaboration with Valorie. That's me.
Elie is going to be the start of today. He is going to be teaching us QFD and doing a case study. And we're going to be interacting with him throughout the whole conversation. My role today is to provide you guys some moderationship. So I will be helping you guys through the chat, helping you with the questions, but more about me. I'm Valorie Hendrix. I have 10 years in manufacturing, starting out in accounting, doing value management, Lean Six Sigma, quality management. And I'm currently a independent consultant and author of Streamlining Function and Value. And it looks like Ashok, we have a question already. Do you?
Valerie, I would like, if in case it's okay, since this is a second session, if you can give some background information, what caused us to have the second session, it will be helpful for people who are joining me. Unless this was already on agenda, I don't know that.
Yeah, so everybody invited here, they were invited because they did actually see the first presentation. But if we need to go do a short background, that we will be presenting that information into our presentation. So you won't directly have to have background knowledge about QFD. This is a novice presentation, so you will get directly basic information that you would have received as well from the first presentation.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Great question.
Yes, indeed. And then before we get started, Valorie, just to echo on what's just been said, this is going to be a very upbeat, interactive session. When we're presenting, I recommend that we all, keep people on mute for the most part, but when a question is being asked or addressed, or maybe I'll just call out some people by name based on the participants list. It's going to be very upbeat. Momentum is going to be high energy, and the idea is to focus more on building a house of quality from scratch, more so than just presentation style and whatnot. So this is a virtual workshop, and everyone is going to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to make this as interactive as possible so that people can really understand and learn by interacting with each other and within the case study. So definitely. So, more information about what we were going to be learning today is the do's and don'ts of using QFD. We'll be going over the conflict resolutions, because anytime you do in project management, you're going to have conflict resolutions, and we need to know exactly what to do when we have a conflict resolution and how to handle that, manage it, and provide a resolution that helps with all of the parties involved. The handoff, which is going to be the most important thing that you will learn today, just because this is not taught in many other QFDs. And what you're going to learn is what to do after you complete your QFD, how to hand it off to the project afterwards, and how to complete it completely. This is going to be very important because a lot of projects do not have the handoff situation. And so, and the last part of it is going to be integrated all throughout the session to really understand what the most important elements of QFD, which is the people, whether it be the customer, whether it be the people on your team, or the people that you're handing it off to. The people element is the most important element throughout the whole QFD.
Yeah, Valerie, beautifully said, and I appreciate that intro into it. All right, so next up, we're gonna just a quick background. What is the House of Quality? It is basically a focused methodology for carefully listening to the voice of the customer and then effectively responding to those needs and expectations. First developed in Japan in the late 1960s. We all know, most of the lean methodologies that we are being taught and or implemented in different companies have come from Japan. So QFD started in the 60s as a form of cause and effect analysis. And then it was brought to the United States in the 1980s and took its early on successes in the automotive industry. That's where QFD came from. The Japanese term for it is Hinshitsu Kino Tenkai. I hope I did not butcher it, but it's a direct translation in English is quality function deployment. I personally prefer more of a customer-centric, customer-focused approach to product development. But that's in a nutshell what QFD is to me. And then we're going to talk a little bit more in details about it. Next slide, please.
So when we go over the quality QFD, we want to understand that the QFD is actually a matrix that we can understand the needs and the wants of the customer and really get that matrix to understand the analysis of the competitive analysis and compare it to the characteristics of the process. And so we can create a matrix to really give a mathematical understanding of exactly where our wants and needs and creativity and innovation needs to be incorporated. It also incorporates different divisions. So we're not just looking at engineering and the project management. We are also going to have different outside divisions such as your accounting and marketing and sales so that we can provide more understanding of what the customer needs and really understand exactly what the focus and understanding of the organization is. And it also creates a highly powerful way of thinking because we're using a way of really creating different ideas and a different approach towards what the product or service needs to be developed towards. And again, Elie said several times that it's customer oriented. It is completely customer oriented because if we look at step number one is the customer needs, and that's the most important step that creates all of the QFD. And it comes from the VOC, the voice of the consumer. So it all implies directly to evaluating exactly what the customer needs. It creates a lot of new learning as well, because you're going to learn exactly new ideas and new innovation ways to create products and services for your organization. And it's a really great tool to use for designing new products and services. Also, along with that, you're going to also find out that you can also prevent problems and cost avoidances at the same time. Okay, and it looks like we have a question from Ashok.
Yes, a very good question by Ashok. Why is QFD also termed as X matrix? I personally do not believe that an X matrix is the equivalent of QFD. An X matrix is more about Hoshin Kanri or policy deployment for a company that has a 3 to 5 year vision and so on and so forth. So, and as a matter of fact, we're gonna talk details. I don't believe X matrix came from the Toyota production system. X matrix is more of a bright product of all the learnings that some of the folks that had gone to Japan and visited Toyota and came back with that tool, and they call it the X matrix. However, although in design and in format, it looks similar to an X matrix, the QFD at the end of the day is not an X matrix. I do not want to mistake the two. So Ashok, very good question. The other question that you have is, why does the name not highlight its centers around customers? It's one of those, folklore things. It's just the way it was named. Again, direct translation from Japanese into English, and it kind of stuck. And so, people are more than welcome to change the name or whatnot, in organizations and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be referred back to as QFD, or quality function deployment. I hope that answers your question. Are you confusing yourselves between QFD and X matrix? Yes, it is definitely creating a little bit of a confusion. An X matrix, again, is not considered, or is not the equivalent of a QFD. An X matrix, a QFD will be a component of an X matrix, possibly, yes, for the long term. At a leadership level, an X matrix is being developed. At a quality level, the quality engineers, marketing, so on and so forth, people getting together within the organization, QFD is being deployed. And so, again, the term for it is Hoshin Kanri in Japanese. That's an entire workshop, a different workshop than what we're trying to accomplish today. But very good question, Ashok. Okay, moving on to this next slide here. A great quote and an extract of an article by Robert Cooper and Elko Kleinschmidt. It says, the greatest difference between winners and losers were found in the quality of execution of pre-delivered activities. Words of wisdom. This is an article or a study from 1993 that's published in the Journal of Product Innovation Management. We can make that available to you all if upon request. So what it says is, new products which were found, or the study itself found that out of 203 cases observed, that the organizations that instituted were early pre-development activities in new product development, NPD, had a higher success rate of those than those that did not. And so, another article, I believe in 2009, by Kao and Zeno did 160 observations and data and had the same outcome. So it's just another proof of how to differentiate a winning product from a failing product from a quality standpoint. And so QFD is at large a part of this redevelopment activity. And again, it's picking up its popularity again, and it's going beyond the automotive industry. All right, so quality management systems, just a little bit of background. This can be expressed as the organizational structure, procedures, processes, and resources needed to implement quality management. The slide here just pretty much shows the QMS frameworks, the ISO 9000 family. I'm sure most of you are aware of that. It is a family of standards that is the most widely known in the world. The 19011 audit workframe deals with quality and sustainability and their integration. And so, as you can see, since 1987, it's only been evolving. And I'm not sure if they've done 2018 version already, and they're probably working on 2021. And so, as you can see, every several years, there's going to be a new iteration of this or the evolution of this QMS. All in all, when you're building the house of quality, you have to look at the work frame itself. And so from a quality framework and related components, starting with ISO or Six Sigma or whatever Lean or Six Sigma methodology you want to put, you want to make sure you lay the foundation for that and then work your way up and then back down. So it's a bottom to top approach and then top to bottom. And then, so this is why we keep saying everyone in the organization has to be involved when it comes to the house of quality or QFD or so on and so forth.
So I just wanted to put some information out there that QFD does not necessarily have to do with a product or service, that you can actually use these in different areas such as quality management, doing a customer needs analysis, your planning and strategy, like we were talking about the Ocean's Canary, doing research, processes, development. You can use them in your supply chain as well as your management.
All right, thank you, Valorie. So on this one here, the do's and don'ts. So what does a QFD do for you? It's an effective communication between multiple departments. Again, instead of working in what I call silos, I wanna take just a little bit of time here, Valorie, to really explain what I mean by that. Oftentimes, and it could be a cultural thing, just from an organizational standpoint. Structure or organizations are managed in silos or in departments, and they're managed vertically, so top to bottom, bottom to top. While in fact, value, or more precisely, value for the customer flows horizontally. So you can see where the conflict really happens. So let's say value is trying to flow from department 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. It's going to have to go over all of these loops and hurdles and whatnot in the way, because you have to talk to the manager, bring it all the way down to the process level, and then move it on to the next department, all the way up to the manager, and so on and so forth, right? QFD, what this provides is it eliminates all these silos. So this way value flows faster horizontally, and it goes from point A to point B in a straight line, versus having to go through all this puzzle or maze. And so it is definitely a big component of it is the effective communication between multiple departments. Next, because of that, so a byproduct of that is it's going to be customer focused and customer centric. Oftentimes what I've heard, not personally I've been part of, but other companies and other colleagues that I've talked to, they would actually bring the customer into their QFD design and into the house of quality. So surveys are great, collecting data is great, but at the end of the day, really talking about the people element, they're going to open the doors to their customers. It provides more transparency. It provides more, confirmation of whether an organization is headed in the right direction from the viewpoint of a customer. And so when we talk about customer focused, oftentimes it's an overused term, but in this case, in the case of QFD, it is definitely a great tool to be able to accomplish that. Focus on essential functions. And we're going to talk about that in the case study and then in live example that we're going to be doing. Keep it, someone already mentioned that, the KISS approach, keep it simple, stupid, right? So only the essentials, focus on the main things and the main things only. That's what a QFD allows you to do. Market awareness, absolutely. It puts you in a mind frame to be able to always reach out to the customer, always reach out to the market and really get a feel and get a sense for what the market is really needing. I would put the market awareness and customer focused as just equivalent to one another. And then finally, shorter development time and lower cost. We've said this in the prior presentation, and you gave an excellent example, Valorie, and I believe I read the slide at the time about a quote from Abraham Lincoln about if I was given an hour to cut down a tree, I would spend 45 minutes sharpening the axe. And so oftentimes what we think is we cannot afford the time and we have to be first to market and whatnot. And so things are kind of rushed. While in fact, if you have a good standard that is being created for QFD, you will ultimately have a shorter development time and lower cost than none. And it's actually, you also, Valorie, used a great quote that says 80% of the cost is already locked into the manufacturing costs, right? Once it's released. And so I'd rather spend my time and do it right the first time than have to have false starts in the post-development phase. The don'ts and what QFD does not provide, department lack awareness. That's not what the QFD will do. It's profit focused. I know we talk a lot about that. At the end of the day, organizations want to turn a buck and make profits, but a QFD is not necessarily overly concerned with being profit focused. And so if you're doing this for the money, you're doing the QFD for the wrong reasons. Very similar to the lean approaches. I believe from a study, I cannot remember exactly where I read it, but something along the line of 80% of Fortune 500 companies that wanted to go on a lean journey ended up being bankrupt because they thought that this was their Hail Mary and something lean is gonna get them out of a potential bankruptcy or whatnot. That's not it. At the end of the day, it is not profit focused. Limited understanding to prioritize the functions. That's not what a QFD is. You cannot have that. No matter how long it takes you, you should always be able to prioritize your functions. And then uncertainty and crisis, that's not what a QFD is for. Market fluctuations, we hear a lot about that nowadays. If anyone is looking at stocks and stock market and whatnot and all that uncertainty, well, I can tell you that Toyota pretty much reported their best best year, I believe, in 2021 at $25 billion in profit. 2020, they had 20 billion. And so they're able to shift gears on the go. So they're not overly concerned with uncertainty in crisis mode. All right, so that's the end of the slide that I wanted to talk about. Valorie, you're next.
Okay, so basically we want to realize that two components really go into the QFD, is that we have our strategic development and our voice of the customer. Now, these two are highly important because we really want to understand exactly with the strategic development where our organization is planning on going, and we want to know exactly how we're going to get there. So any decision that is made within the QFD has to really be backed by what the strategic development is and exactly where they want to go into the future. And of course, we talked a lot about the voice of the consumer. And so the voice of the consumer is going to basically provide us the information and the data that how and what and a comparison of exactly what the QFD is going to be. So in order to really have the requirements of the customer, we need to know directly from the customer what we are going to produce or provide for the customer. Okay.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Valorie. So up next, we're just going to talk real quick about the structure. Before we get started with the house of quality, right? And the slide here says, talks about the customer needs. We need to be able to answer some of the, the questions before we actually embark on any one of these exercises or any one of these workshops that where we're transferring the knowledge. At the end of the day, you need to be able to answer these questions. Who are your customers, right? Oftentimes we talk about a customer needs, right? But organizations have a database of customers, and different customers have different needs, right? At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is trying to create a standard that is going to collectively that's going to allow us to prioritize all of these customer needs. And so using a Pareto chart or whatnot, I mean, multiple different analyses can be conducted, but at the end of the day, we need to be very well aware of who the customers are, what are their needs, how well the customers satisfied now. So what is the current state? How will you determine if their needs are met, right? So what is that relationship with success versus failure? And how much is good enough performance? Oftentimes we think we're going to boil the ocean and cure cancer. Well, that's great. I'd love for us to be able to do that, but there are some limitations. There's a famous saying, but something along the line of I do not let perfect get in the way of pretty good. Okay, so we need at some point we have to be very convinced that how much is good enough performance, and then customers have to be convinced enough, right? So keep that in the back of your minds. And then at the end of the day, what we're doing, we're analyzing those answers at each step, which we'll talk about steps 1 through 8 based on this house that you see here, house of quality. And then we're going to capture the results in house of quality. And then there's definitely at the end of the day, there's a defined deliverable that we can just put on the table and say, this is basically the end of it. There's a start time and there's an end time, and everything in between is what we're going to be teaching today on this workshop. So as you can see, very simple. 8 steps. On the left-hand side is the customer needs, and that's what Valorie already mentioned earlier on. Then you move to the benchmarking or the competitive comparison. I say no more than 3 top competitors that you need to be benchmarking against. You move on to the characteristics and the measures. Sorry, I'm going a little too fast for you.
You can.
So because I'm super excited, I just want to take a deep dive into creating one with the folks on the call today. So number 3 is characteristics and measures. Those are the engineering and functional requirements within the company, what can be done and how. Moving on to number 4. Number 4 is, I'm going to tell you right now, is where you're going to spend most of your time. This is where the debate gets very heated, and we're going to talk about conflict resolution based off of that. So, number 1 is super simple. Number 2 is easily identified. Number 3 is is basically no more than a capacity analysis, right? This is what we can do, right? But number 4 is where things get a little dicey. So this is why I personally prefer to leave number 4 towards the end, and I'm going to talk about those tricks and tips later on in the live case study. Moving on to the next slide, you see I'm going to jump directly to step number 8, which is the conflicts. This is not necessarily conflicts between the individuals, but basically the conflicts between the characteristics and the measures. We'll talk more in details about that in the live example. So think of it as correlations. What is one characteristic or one function correlated with another function, and where things are positively, or there's a strong correlation versus a weak correlation. Moving on to the bottom of the house, this is where we do the calculated importance. And then number 7 is where we're going to be talking about the targets and limits. So yeah, number 6 is the competitive technical benchmark. So 6 and 2 pretty much go hand in hand. So you can say they're pretty much equivalent to one another, but ultimately your number 1 deliverable is going to be your targets and limits. What can be done? How can we measure how good enough for what is good enough for performance, and at the end of the day, what are the prioritizations that we need to be focusing on, and then kind of either putting everything else on the back burner or just completely forgetting about it. So all right, moving on to the next step or next slide. All right, handoff. Just by show of hands or raising hands, or just people want to get on the audio or whatnot, who here has gone through a proper handoff standard or proper handoff procedure? Maybe Ashok or Gary or Khalid, Josh, any one of y'all? Who here has done a proper handoff?
Gary.
Gary, can you answer this question for me, please? Have you done a proper, and I mean proper, it's very subjective, but a handoff procedure?
Hey there, gang. Hi there, this is Gary.
All right, go ahead.
It was for SMED setup reduction, and we set a target for the power team for setup time reduction, and then once we hit that target, then it was transposed to a specific lean team that would do a bigger or like a more granular detail of a setup time reduction based on steps, more observation, that type of analysis, so that the macro was done by the big team, and then once we hit a target, then it was a handoff to a more specific team for more advanced improvement.
How did that go for y'all? Did y'all sustain it for a while, or did it backtrack? Or did it fall back on you?
No, it never went back to me. Thankfully, I got to do other things. But no, the lean team took it on, and because of the nature of the work, there were some variants for up and down, positive and negative, that could happen. There wasn't any major unfavorable trends. So that the initial improvements were established and then put in place for the processes, and then the lean team then by going into the actual detail of the steps, were able to help lock those improvements in. Perfect. So that you wouldn't get the traditional after the handoff. You have chaos or falling back to the old ways.
So for the most part, you had a smooth handoff experience.
Yeah, and that was set up from the beginning because we set our target. Awesome. and the other group knew that once that happened, that they would be impacted to do the next steps, and that's what their the other lean group, that was their specialty, that's what they did on a day-to-day basis.
Perfect.
So that we had at least a process put in place where we thought we could have long-term improvement, and not some of the traditional fallbacks of you have a sugar high of improvement and then it goes away.
Yeah. Yes. I thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. Anyone else besides Gary would like to share Their experience with a handoff? Have you had a handoff? Have you not had a handoff? Anyone else? This is what I meant by crickets. This is what you're silent. That's fine. That's fine. That's okay. Anyway, so again, Gary, thank you so much for sharing that. What I would like to talk about here is that, and this is one of the main highlights of this presentation. Oftentimes, folks, they sign up for workshops and they go, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And here you go. Congratulations. At the end of this workshop, you all are going to be experts at House of Quality or any other lean tool or whatnot. But in reality, that's not the case. In reality, this is where you have a huge downfall because expectations are not set early on. And just like Gary said, so Gary had a smooth transition because everything else, everything within the system was already predetermined and pre-agreed upon. You're back on mute. Anyways, so yeah, in this workshop, we're going to be definitely targeting this before we take a deep dive into the House of Quality. So everything we just showed you earlier, all the different components, all of that, we're going to be talking about in details. We're going to give you a live example of it, but it's very important to me that we leave, if you leave this workshop today with one thing and one thing only, think of the handoff. Think of how you're not going to be married to this House of Quality for the rest of your lives, right? And so just some high level key points here. You got to create a standard. You have to have definitely departmental buy-in. You have to have accountability meetings. We'll talk about those here in a bit. You have to have a clear start date and an end date, and then you have to have an out meeting and a proper follow-up. So again, what we're trying to do here is we need, oftentimes is what happens is we only focus on the House of Quality as a tool and disregard the people element in the training. So it is very critical to me to create a standard for the handoff of House of Quality, and I've done that multiple different times. A few revisions here and there, but nothing major. And here's the best part: I'm not the one that creates it by myself. I have the entire team that's going to be part of this House of Quality helping me with this. And so what I'll be doing here, I'll be sharing my experience with you today. And from my knowledge, there are 4 categories and 8 steps. Let's start with phase number 1, which is the planning phase. You have to have a clear understanding and a clear identification of the parties involved in the handoff. It's very, very critical. And I'm a very democratic person. Oftentimes you pick a person and you think that they're going to be all fully committed into doing this House of Quality with you, and for some reason they might not be. So you don't want to just assume that whoever's being picked is going to be 100% committed. So you have to make a clear identification of those parties involved and make sure that they have the passion and the drive to do something like that. And really, at the end of the day, there should be something in it for them. So either recognition or an award of some sort or something like that. This is, again, in the planning phase. Next step, you have to define a clear deadline for the project handoff. We're going to say, this is when we're going to start it, this is where we're going to end it, and this is exactly when we're going to be handing it off. Do your best to make it a must not miss hard date. Do your absolute best to make it a hard date and try not to miss that date, because it really drives accountability. Then you're going to create a communication plan as early as possible in the process, preferably right after you identify the parties involved with clear roles and responsibilities. What I've done in my past is I've used the RACI matrix. Has anyone here heard of the RACI matrix? You can answer in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute. Anyone here has heard of the RACI matrix? RACI. RACI. Gary, man, you're all over the place. I appreciate that. Yes, exactly. RACI. Valorie, have you heard of the RACI?
Yes.
So RACI stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consultant, and Informed. And so it helped me a lot when I was doing my House of Quality, because it really gives a clear understanding and a clear awareness of who's responsible, who's accountable, who's going to be on the consulting side, who's going to be on a need to know basis only, or informed. So that's the end of phase number 1. Phase number 2 is the knowledge transfer phase. This is where we invest all of our time in transferring that knowledge, and hence the handoff, right? So you need to update the need to know or read me first document with relevant information. You have to have a document put in place. A word of mouth is not going to get you anywhere. Everything has to be documented. This is a high level only document and does not need to have all the details. So this is just a big picture, big map that's going to say, folks, this is all you need to know. Step 1, 2, 3, 4. Make it 1 page only and not overly complicated. Keep it simple. At a bare minimum, it should have the project description, steps of the project setup, information on how to run the project locally, so people can just control their own destiny. Information on how the House of Quality is deployed, if it's part of a Hoshin Connery, a bigger picture of Hoshin Connery or strategy deployment, or whether you have your own House of Quality strategy deployment, that needs to be on that one-page summary or one-page need to know document. And then other relevant information to the specific project, the specific product, service, whatever, what have you. It would make it easy for a new team member to take over without support. So you don't always have to babysit this project. Think of it as what would day one look like on the job. And so this document would be, extremely helpful for someone that's, new or has not had any experience in House of Quality, to be able to absorb it right away. And finally, you got to organize the knowledge sharing sessions. This is going to be multiple sessions. It's not one and done. I've mentioned this in the other presentation that we had in the other workshop on LinkedIn, Valorie, if you remember.
Mhm.
House of Quality could take the better part of 6 to 8 months sometimes. What we're trying to give you today in a couple of hours, and what we did last time within 1 hour, is just very high level and very condensed version of a House of Quality. But oftentimes, multiple sessions have to be put in place, multiple training sessions have to be put in place, and this is why it could take a little bit of time. But again, back to the comment of I'd rather spend 45 minutes sharpening the axe. This is basically what that means when you organize the knowledge sharing sessions. Phase 3 is the deliverables. What is the outcome? What is the the scope? What are we trying to accomplish at the end of the day? So you got to transfer the ownership. You have to be very clear that this is not something that you as a project manager or the owner of the House of Quality, you're not going to own it for life. You have to have that transfer of ownership clearly stated and basically drawing the line in the sand. Whoever needs to be aware of the situation or whatnot needs to be part of this conversation. And then from there on, you provide the documentation and feature requirements. So this is where you set up a final handoff meeting and say, this is it, starting tomorrow morning. Y'all are on your own, so to speak. And then number 4 is the communication part. So you send an email titled final handoff, and this is where you can either do it in the out meeting or after the meeting is over, the final handoff meeting is over, you can just send out that email and just make sure you have that documented. So anyone that has any questions, y'all can run it locally. You don't need me. You can move on to do other things within the scope of your work or within the organization. So Gary, based on what I just said, it was pretty, it was a mouthful. Do you agree with some of these steps? Is this something that you've experienced in your past or along those lines?
Yeah, I'm tracking right with you. Some steps could be different just based on the history of your organization, group, and team members. Like I said, in my case, we had an established lean team that could handle some of the very specific items that were needed. So that the handoff, in some of these steps were already, I guess, confirmed, by everybody. That they understood their role. It wasn't anything unusual for them to do. It was part of their natural processes. So when you have that type of handoffs, some of the steps are almost instantaneous for understanding and when it happens. I think the biggest problem is when you don't have that. There's no clarity, and there's no job description for the task. So some people could feel isolated that, I'm just getting dumped on, quote unquote, right? These are added tasks for my work. I'm not benefiting from it or something in that nature. That's when I think some of this could start breaking down, just that the clarity isn't brought at the beginning in the planning process, like you said, sharpening the axe, so that everything is understood, if that makes sense.
It does. You strike me as having been part of an organization that is very well established in their lean journey.
Yeah, we were fortunate that that we had a lean team that was created and was established for a couple years. And they had some good positive momentum during that time frame. So, they were, eager, to participate and to jump in. So that does help, when you have something like that that's available and already had success.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you.
Valerie, thank you. Do we want to answer a few questions? I believe
Yeah.
a couple of questions.
Yeah, Ashok, if you want to get yourself on mute, or we can just read the questions out here from
Sure.
the chat.
I can ask the questions. One question I wanted to check was about how do you connect QFD to the frontline team members who typically are oblivious of even the company goals, because the verbiage used in company goals of meetings or terminology used is totally out of their vocabulary. And then second thing is, how do they know that they are connected to the goals that are being created in QFD from a customer point of view, from a business point of view, from a product point of view, from a process point of view? Because as I have seen in my experience, these are big terms, and the job descriptions of frontline team members and supervisors or leads who are actually doing the work on the ground level really do not know what all these terms are. They have never been trained on it. They have no idea what this is all about. This is just like Gary said, it is forced onto them, and then things start breaking down.
Okay. So Valerie, if you don't mind me, I'd like to answer. And Ashok, thank you so much for talking about this. This is where we talk more about the conflict resolution and the people element in the process. So at an organizational level, you're absolutely right. There's the top bottom approach and then bottom up approach. The bottom up approach is the one that I'm mostly interested in, because at the end of the day, the line operators or the field operators or people on you call them the frontline employees. At the end of the day, they are the ones that are adding value to the product that the customer is willing to pay for, right? And so their feedback is very important. If you have a good Hoshin Connery or strategy deployment put in place, you would not have this issue. You would not run into this issue at all. If you have a culture that is built around open feedback, you would not have that issue. If you have a culture that's built around frontline employees just checking in and checking out and getting a paycheck at the end of the week or at the end of the month, I totally agree with you. This is a tool that will be overwhelming and definitely an overload, and not a lot of people are going to buy into it. And so this is where the culture element of things really go hand in hand with QFD and the house of quality. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does at a very high level. But what if that type of environment happens, which is mostly the case? Individuals.
Yeah, you have to address the culture first. I highly recommend not going through an HOQ. Do not go down the rabbit hole.
Right. Even if you look at Hoshin Connery, that becomes a wasteful activity, because managers would sit down and do all that, but they have no idea what is happening on the shop floor. Frontline people are thinking about. So that also becomes a waste of time.
Ashok, you probably know this better than I do. Do you know what makes Toyota a very successful company? It's not the $25 billion profit a year. It's not the new products that they're introducing. It's the culture. Every single book that's ever been written about Toyota talks about the same thing. As a matter of fact, did you know that there is not a lean program at Toyota? Does anyone know that?
Lean is not a word. Lean is not a word used in Toyota.
They do not know that. They've been interviewed since the 90s, and every single employee that comes out of Toyota is asked the same question. Everyone's got the same answer. We do not know what you're talking about. At the end of the day, it is in their DNA. And so, what we're trying to do here in this workshop, Ashok, is to highlight an HOQ and talk about those cultural conflicts, so to speak, very openly. I don't believe there should be anything to be hidden here. At the end of the day, it's our bread and butter. And so in order to be able to keep the doors open, we have to have those hard conversations. And so I would definitely, so to answer your question directly, I would definitely handle the culture first before I go down a QFD deployment or HOQ deployment, especially at the frontline employees. And more specifically, if you don't mind, Valorie, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on this, because this is very important, Ashok, and it's at the essence of what we're trying to talk about today. Make your HOQ, if you're gonna, if you know for a fact that this is a tool that you're highly bought into, and you're trying to, I wouldn't say convert, but you're trying to change the skepticals into believers, right? You can't go from a no to a yes. Okay, you have to have a maybe in between. I call it the DREC cycle, DREC, denial, resistance, exploration, commitment. Before you ask people and expect them to be committed, you have to go through the DREC cycle, the DR and E, okay? What I would do in this case, I would do a Kaizen event and make that HOQ as part of a Kaizen event and make a commitment, if possible. And I know I'm talking about something that's within my control versus what's that's not within my control. So things that are within my control, I would speak to, and I would say everyone that's part of this Kaizen event is let's say you're going through a financial crisis, or people are getting laid off or whatnot. You would say, we've already laid off people that need to be laid off. The rest of the team that is part of this exercise, we're committed to you, that you're not going to lose your jobs. This Kaizen event is going to be for the benefit of 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, multiple case studies that I've heard about multiple times, that I've done this myself in a Kaizen event to really bring that morale back up. Okay, especially if you're dealing with a company that's using lean as a Hail Mary, or last resort or whatnot. If that's the case, I mean, you're already too late, in the game. But if you're trying to make the best out of the situation, I would turn an HOQ, House of Quality exercise, into a Kaizen event. I recommend 5 days. Really explain what's in it for the frontline employees and try to make that conversion. Hopefully, you're never put in a situation like this. Hopefully, you're part of an organization that is all bought into lean and doing these HOQ exercises and whatnot. But I'm kind of reading between the lines based on your question, Ashok, and it struck me as this is something you've dealt with in the past. And so culture is key in the success of this exercise.
Thank you for openly bringing it up as culture being the first thing to look at. And typically what my experience tells me, bringing up words like House of Quality, QFD, Hoshin Kanri really doesn't help that part to bring culture. You have to make this as a perpetual way of coaching and mentoring at the people higher level and lower level. Leave these terms out. Then once their thinking starts connecting with each other, as was mentioned, how do you challenge to eliminate silos? Once they start talking the same language, then you can probably bring up these tools, because tools are a way to end, not that tools are the ultimate goal. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
My pleasure, Ashok. And at the end of the day, I want to make sure that what I'm speaking about and what I'm speaking of is factual and not some because at the end of the day, again, this is not a workshop that's designed to just sell you on the HOQ and everyone goes home and then you go like, okay, well, what did we talk about? Come Monday morning, you go like, what did we talk about on Friday? That's not what it is. We're trying to, this is designed to have, if you retain 20% of the information that's being given today, I'm happy. I mean, Valorie, I didn't talk to you about this, but if people retain 20% today, I'm super. To me, I'm gonna have a great weekend. So, all right. So I see a little bit of a Khalid. You have a question about the major challenges, how to eliminate silos in the organization. And Ashok, you answered by saying that it's communication, and I totally agree. At the end of the day, it's communication / culture. Really understanding clear roles and responsibilities, really understanding that we're all headed in the right direction, and so there should be no friction whatsoever in the workplace. And if there is, it's going to take a heck of a leader to be able to break down those silos. So, Josh, you would like to add an example? If you want to speak to it, so you can share the audio real quick, and then we can take a quick deep dive into the live case study. Josh, do you want to speak to it? Yeah, maybe some technical difficulties, but basically Josh is asking, you would like to add an example. We were working on inventory project. We took the frontline workers for a field visit at a supermarket and a normal grocery store and showed them the comparisons on visuals, automated systems, product placements, etc. That's awesome. I highly applaud that. That's absolutely, shows respect for people. The Toyota calls it monozukuri and hirozukuri. The monozukuri is making products with excellence for life, and hirozukuri is growing people with excellence and perfection for life. And so what this example here shows is the respect for people, and making everyone involved and everyone engaged in the an organization. So excellent example. Thank you so much. All right, without any further ado, I'd like to take a deep dive into creating the House of Quality. Ashok, you raised your hand. Any question?
Yeah, one quick comment on Josh's example was that it's always better to show people what they can perceive, because that's the best way to learn. The retention is much higher as against just talking to them on a presentation or a slideshow. It is much easier when they actually use all their senses to understand what the concept is and be able to replicate it later on, because they have seen something working.
Hey, Ashok, I commend you for your comment. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Is that okay?
Sure. Not to me, everybody, right?
Well, every time I've ever designed anything, and I really mean this, every time, not 1 out of 5 times, not 4 out of 5 times, every single time I put a design together and I share it with the frontline employees or field operators, or the first level of the first step into the process, they have always outsmarted me. They would always take what I would give them and then make it even better and give it back to me. I am yet to be part of an organization, and again, I've been in 4 or 5 different industries, right? At any level, you would be very amazed with what some people are capable of doing, and not realizing that it would have been possible to begin with. And so that's just my little secret. The key here is to be, as a continuous improvement professional or practitioner, is to be the catalyst and not technically dictating what needs to happen. And so in this example, people were taken to a grocery store, basically showing them the supermarket, right? You're showing them at a very basic level, Hijunka boxes and Kanbans, and I would imagine, because you're talking about inventory, Josh, you were talking about inventory projects. So without really using all those fancy words, you're just showing them visual controls, visual management, so on and so forth. I highly appreciate that. So thank you so much. Khalid, you're saying they agree with that, and what actually happens is one-way communication from top to bottom. Yeah, sadly, I agree with you. Sadly, most organizations, they have that approach, which is dictating what needs to happen. So again, we don't want to be talking about fancy things, and it's not peachy and dandy every single day. There are challenges in multiple organizations across the board. So yes, at the end of the day, just humility and being humble with the approach. Absolutely, Ashok. All right, if no further questions, I'd like to take a jump into the exercise. And if I may share my screen, Valorie, anything else you'd like to add before we take this deep dive?
Well, first off, I would just like to say that Elie, this is like amazing information, and this is why we're recording it, is so that everybody can go back and re-listen to what exactly you said, because this is so much valuable information. And again, if we only retain 20% of that, we're doing really well. But we can go back.
I will celebrate.
Yeah, if we can go back and gain even another 20% off of that. So, even at the end of the day, next week, come Monday, we can get 40%, and we can be 40% better into our thinking and learning and whatnot. Also, I just want to make a little comment about the handoff. I know in our little picture here, we have what looks like a relay, track relay. And this is kind of like a visual for me when I think of a handoff, is that I want to think of as a handoff is that the handoff actually starts at the very beginning of the whole process. In the relay, we're at the very beginning of the race. We want to push ourselves to be at our best. We want to have everything set up. We want to have our equipment to, if anybody's ever done a relay race, we know exactly that we have to have our footing set up completely straight. We have to have that practice. We have to have that knowledge. And so when we have that first shoot off, gun goes off and we have to sprint as hard as we can. We have a good solid straight start, and then we run around the track as quickly as we can and keep ourselves as ahead of the pace. And if anybody's done track, we know that it's a mental, it's physical. And so we keep going around the track. And when we hand that baton off, we have things set in place, hopefully that we're ahead of our competitors. We are able to know that our teammates ahead of us are ready and solid. They have everything that they need to have a really great start in their race for the next round. So as soon as we hand off that baton, we have everything set up in place for them for their success. So I just wanted to add that visual comment into that as well.
And you're keeping the momentum going. You're not stopping the race.
Right.
So, the relay is there's someone that's, going at very high speed, and then you're just, picking up that momentum, and then you're, going on your own. So a very good representation. Thank you, Valorie. All right, I'm super excited for the next portion here. We're going to spend the better part of the rest of the hour basically building a house of quality together. So just by a show of hands or comments in the chat, who's excited for this? Who's ready for this?
Me.
All right, perfect. So let me share here real quick. So I'm on screen number 1. All right, so what I did is I built a template. This will be available to you all upon request. Or Valorie, I leave it up to you to decide how you want to do this. So very basic. We're not gonna, because we only have 1 hour, and remember these exercises take 6 to 8 months. We're not gonna spend 6 to 8 months building this. And so very high level, something that's already pre-built into Excel. So a lot of the calculations are already gonna be made for us. But basically what I would like us to be spending most of our time on, and you're gonna be, again, we're gonna be using the chat feature a lot, or you're more than welcome to get yourselves off mute and talk to us about this. This is a very high interactive, high engagement session. And so I'm gonna be asking a lot of questions, and I respect or expect a lot of answers back, okay? And so in a nutshell, we're going to give so this is the empty template, and I have a couple examples. I'm not going to share the examples with you as of yet because we're going to be building our own, but I'd like to use the car example. So let's say we're designing a car here as a team, Valorie, myself, and everyone else that's participating in this exercise, and we're going to build a house of quality. And so first and foremost, we're going to give it a name. So let's say this is the car design. We're going to give it a date. So we all know that we started this on 5/20/2022. This will be a good memory to have. And as we mentioned earlier, step number 1 is to look at the left-hand side of the house, which is the customer requirements. What are the customers telling us? What is the voice of customer survey has told us? What is our marketing research has told us? What is, some of the feedback, whether a customer is, we have open doors to our customers that are walking in and telling us verbally or collecting, however you collect the data. I've heard some folks are looking at AI, machine learning to collect the data. Whichever method, I'm not here to debate the method. I'm here to just say, let's put those to good use based on designing a car. So just talk to me, Valorie, and other folks on the car. What are some of the customer requirements that you look for in a car? What would you like for a car to be or to have as far as a requirement? Valorie, what do you like in a car?
I like mobility.
Mobility. Could you be a little bit more specific on that?
Let's see, being able to actually drive. So the purpose of the vehicle is to go from point A to point B.
So would you say mobility / reliability?
Yes.
You want to be able to wake up in the morning, crank it on, and it's on your way, right? You don't want any battery issue, dead battery issues. You don't want any clutch issues, any whatever, right? You want it to be super reliable. I turn on that key and it's off I go, right? Reliability. All right. Anyone else? Let's see the chat feature. I don't have the chat feature.
Ashcock says low maintenance.
Low maintenance. I like that one. Low maintenance. I don't want to spend a whole lot of money on changing oil, filters, whatever. Safety, absolutely, it has to be safe. I want it to be safe. What else? High mileage, could you be more specific with high mileage? You want it to be high life expectancy, or do you want it to be the engine to last long? Ashok? 50 plus miles per gallon. Okay, so MPG. Perfect, miles per gallon. What else? I'm not gonna do all 10 requirements. Again, you know, when you're doing your own and you're spending all that time on it, try not to go over 25 customer requirements by 25 functional requirements. It'll make it extremely hard, and you'll see there are gonna be a lot of conflicts in here. So let's try to keep it to roughly about 6 steps. So I need 2 more.
About comfort.
Comfort. Okay, let's do comfort. What about cheap? You want it to be cheap? Inexpensive? Not, you know, cheap, not from a quality standpoint, but from a price point standpoint. Customer requirements should be very specific and measurable. Yes, and you will get that, Ashok, from the customer of the voice of the customer surveys. I totally agree. Yes, absolutely. So what about inexpensive? Do you agree with that, Valorie?
Yes.
Right, I'm gonna take out comfort. Let's make it inexpensive. I don't, you know, the word cheap to me is like it targets quality at its core.
Mhm.
Sometimes, you know, it could be a cheap product, but not so cheap in quality. So yeah, I like the word inexpensive. I need 1 more. You want it to be maybe fast? GPS, Dolby system. So technology, you want it to be very techy. Techie, I'll take techie. Alrighty, so the more diverse, the better the results are gonna be, and I'm gonna show why here in a little bit. Okay, perfect. So we've determined, and again, you know, without really looking at a voice of customer surveys or whatnot, we're just making, you know, for the sake of this workshop, we're making stuff up. Okay, so let's look at the customer importance. So they told us I wanted to be reliable, but what is on a scale from 1 to 5, how reliable I want it to be? So this is customer importance. For this exercise, we'll guess that again and make sure that proper voice of customer survey is being conducted. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how reliable do you think the customers, how important it is to the customers for a car to be reliable? Valerie, you're the only one that's not on mute.
So 5, definitely the most important.
Okay, most important. What about low maintenance? So you see, as I'm putting the numbers in, just watch this. This is the beauty of Excel. It makes calculations for you. All right, so 5 on scale of 1 to 5, this is 100% relative weight. Low maintenance, how important is it to be low maintenance?
For me, it'd be a 4.
All right, for you a 4. Khalid, I see that you're responding in the chat feature. A 4. So we have 2 4s. Anyone else? I'm a very democratic person. Democratic, not necessarily a Democrat.
I would call low maintenance as 5.
I'm sorry?
I would call low maintenance as 5 because that's
So
the cost of ownership.
we have 2 4s and 1 5. Anyone else? All right, going once, going twice. All right, let's make it a 4. All righty, safety.
5.
Ah, man, you're making this very hard for me. Everything is a 5, but we'll see. All righty, anyone else on the safety? All right, I have another 5. 5, everyone super safe. All right, miles per gallon. No compromise, I agree, Khalid. Safety comes first, absolutely. All righty, miles per gallon,
4,
high mileage.
4, cost of maintenance, cost of ownership.
I think it's a 3 for me.
Okay, I see a 3 and someone else said a 4. Anyone else?
I think on chat, somebody also said 4.
Mhm.
All right, 4 dominates. Inexpensive. Price point of, I don't know, 20 to 30 grand, maybe 15 to 20.
That would be a 2 for me.
2. So you don't care for it to be inexpensive. What else?
No, if you say the price range is 20 to 30, that is okay because that's the normal range that anybody can get a car, especially when you're getting the other features that you're talking about.
Yeah, because we're gonna see between inexpensive and techie, it's gonna get a little unrealistic. So I see a 3. I'm gonna go with a 3 on this one.
Mhm.
And techie, how techie do you want it to be?
2 or a 1 for me.
2 or a 1? Anyone else? A 3. So between 2 and 3.
It basically becomes more techy, more expensive.
More tech and more expensive. Absolutely, Ashok. Absolutely. And trust me, the customers all were willing to pay for more techie. So, all right. So I'm gonna give it. I'm sorry. You said either a 1 or a 2, Valorie.
Correct.
All right, let's go with a 2. So as you can see, again, normally if you were just to do this on pen and paper, you would have to make all the calculations. But the beauty of Excel is it gives you all the relative weight. So what this relative weight means is that out of the total of all of these scores, which is 23, what we're doing is we're saying 5 out of 23 is 22%, 4 out of 23 is 17%, 5 out of 23 again is 22%, so on and so forth. So your relative weight here, the sum of all the percentages is 100%. Everyone is following me so far?
Mhm.
All right, sounds good. So from here, I would like to move on to the functional requirements. What is our capacity as an organization? What is the engineering department capable of doing? What are some of the engineering parameters that we can have and possibly look at? And so I'm going to give an example. So these are some of the features that the customers are looking for. This is what they want to see in a car. But when you're designing a car, you have some parameters you have to take into account from an engineering standpoint, one of which would be the weight of the car, right? Center of gravity, so on and so forth. That comes in the play big time. You have to be able to design an optimal weight of the car. Let me hear from everyone else. What do you think some of the engineering parameters would come into play in this case? Because obviously you can see I already have my cheat sheet here, but I want to hear it from everyone else. What do y'all think?
Type of material used.
The materials? Is that what I
Yes.
heard? So all the alloy, the steel alloys, and all the materials, and so on and so forth. I agree. What else? What about the engine size? Do you think this is a functional requirement?
Mhm.
All right, so let's look at engine size and power, maybe. Right? How many horsepowers, so on and so forth. Okay. What else? Okay, I'm gonna move on. So let's say cost of production. How much is it gonna cost us to make it? This is actually a function of or a parameter that we look at. We're gonna look at expected life, which means what is the life cycle of a car. And let's give it one more, and let's say this is gonna be dimensions. I like big SUVs, so dimensions to me would definitely be a big major, or I'm sorry, a big or a major parameter to be focusing on. So again, without really making things overly complicated, I'm just gonna keep the parameters at this. All right, perfect. So remember how I said I'm gonna leave the inner relationships towards the end, because this is where the discussion is gonna get very, very much fun. What I would like to do is I'd like to move to step which is on your guide. You're gonna see a step number 8 or section number 8, but this is the roof. And in the roof, as you can see, I've already built a data validation, a list of things where you can just use the drop down menu. This will be the correlations. So we're gonna have a positive, a negative, and or a no correlation. Sometimes people use a strong correlation, which is plus plus. Sometimes they use a strong negative, which is a minus minus, and then there's a no correlation. The idea here is we're gonna put every one of these parameters that we just assigned, and we're gonna compare them against each other, because what happens here. No problem, Kishori. Thank you for letting us know. As long as you're staying with us, that's all that matters. And again, this is being recorded, so you can always refer back to it at your own time. All right, so here, this is very important. What happens is, remember the comment I made earlier about everyone wants to boil the ocean and cure cancer? Well, this is again a very mini session on HOQ. Oftentimes what I've been part of is something that's overly extremely complicated. And so we can have 25 plus functional requirements for a single part. What this roof here will be able to do is we'll be able to highlight all the conflicts. And then where from an internal capability standpoint, you'll be able to go back and be like, hey, listen, there's absolutely no correlation between this technical requirement and this technical requirement. Why are we even worrying about it? Or between this one and this one, there's a very strong correlation, and it does not really, it really conflicts with steps 9, 10, and 11. This will be able to give you that. And so the way I do it is I look at, for instance, what is the relationship between weight and materials? Is it a positive correlation, a negative correlation, or no correlation? Valerie, what do you think? The weight to the materials.
Yeah, it's a positive correlation.
A positive correlation. So what I would do is I would go in here. As a matter of fact, where the two intersect, I'm not doing a great job with this. I just put this together real quick, but basically the two have to be intersecting in an area. And so let's say this is the area where they intersect. I'm going to give it a positive. Okay. Same thing for weight and engine size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another.
So let's call this a positive here. I want to make sure we check the chat. Does everyone understand what we're trying to do with this? We're not at a point where we're looking at the relationships between the customer requirements and the functional requirements. I'm looking at the correlations between just the functional requirements. I want to make sure everyone is following us. Okay, perfect. Let's look at weight and cost of production. Is there a positive correlation or a negative correlation or no correlation between weight and cost of production? I'm hearing a positive. Valerie, what would you say?
Absolutely positive.
Absolutely positive. So let's call this guy a positive as well. So far, so good. Expected life, over 200,000 miles. Does the weight have any correlation with expected life? Just because there's a certain weight of the vehicle, that means it's gonna last longer or last shorter. Tricky. See where it gets you to, okay, I hear there's a negative. It gets to, it really stirs the conversation big time.
Yeah.
This is why one person cannot be doing this. Multiple different people have to be doing this HOQ. You're laughing, Valerie. You have not been, you've heard of HOQ, but you have not really been part of an exercise that does that. It makes you think big time.
All right. Yeah. Well,
So I'm hearing a negative and I'm hearing a no correlation. Valerie, you're the tiebreaker.
I am going to say there's a positive correlation between weight and
even harder. So I'm hearing 3 different opinions here. Okay, so y'all see where this is all fun and giggly and we're having a great time. In the span of 6 to 8 months, it's not a fun exercise. I can almost assure you that. It can be based on who's running it, right? The person that's leading this exercise could make it very positive, very fun, or can make it an absolute nightmare. And this is back to the culture that Ashok was talking about earlier. So let's see here. I have 2 positive, 1 negative, 1 correlation. I'm going to go with positive. Sorry, guys. So expected life and weight, let's call it right here. All right, weight and dimensions. So the weight of the vehicle and the dimensions of the vehicle. Is there a positive correlation or negative correlation? So the larger the dimensions, the more weight possibly? Okay. So everything is positive so far. Man, you're giving me a little bit of a hard time here. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. And then so on and so forth. So now we're going to jump to materials. What is the correlation between weight?
Elie, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
When you did the correlation between weight and cost of production, why did it not go oblique, rather came in the same line? Because you're basically trying to connect weight and materials, and above that column, you're putting so there is a connection to that particular attribute, right?
There is. I'm a little disoriented when it comes to making them meet, because what the idea is that this is going this way and this is going that way, and it's wherever they meet. And so I don't have clear.
Okay.
I put this together fairly quickly. A better, just to show you, a better representation would be a house of quality that looks like this. I have another template for it, but I'm not using it because it's just not filling up the whole. And I'm not trying to make it overcomplicated, but you can see
this
here.
is what I've seen in the past, right? Okay.
Yeah, you can see where the two meet. So let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say 1 and let's see, it doesn't like me today. So let's say 1 and 6, they meet here. And so you can make it, so on and so forth. But yeah, I apologize, guys. I'm just trying to give you the idea behind, where to place these positives and whatnot. And I don't have a good
got
guide.
it.
I don't have a good guide right now, but very good question, Ashok. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Materials and engine size and power. Is there a strong correlation or negative correlation?
Strong correlation.
So let's say, just for the sake of it, let's say they meet here. Okay, materials and cost of production. I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Materials and expected life. Very important. Expected life and materials.
Yes.
I agree, positive, because depending on, then again, I apologize about the placement of the positives and whatnot. Again, if we had something that's a better guide on the roof, it'll make it easier. All right, materials and dimensions. A little tricky here. How big the machine is.
No correlation.
Pardon me?
I would say no correlation.
Personally, I agree with that. I don't think there should be between the materials, and then it's 0. So you can leave it blank. So, and then so on and so forth. So let's say now you move on to the engine size and cost of production. Engine size. So let me make it a little bigger.
Positive.
So that is a positive. Let's say I'm going to put it here. Say another positive here. Engine size and expected life. I think that's a no-brainer. Engine size and dimensions. Tricky. You could have a big engine,
right?
In a small
compact. You can't do that.
Right. So personally, I would say it's a negative, but I could, I'm happy to debate this. And so on and so forth. I'm not gonna spend more time on this, but you get the idea. And so based on all the pluses and the minuses that you would receive, you'd be like, okay, well, maybe I need to reconsider weight and cost of production. Maybe that's something I do not need to focus on. But if I have a plus between weight and engine size, well, I need to focus on that and go back to the engineering drawings and look at that again. Okay, perfect. Now the fun part. Now we're going to be giving ourselves some relationships and based on different symbols and different weights. If anyone here has done an FMEA, you know exactly what I'm talking about, the 1, 3, and 9 ratings, so on and so forth. But originally the House of Quality, they wanted you're more than welcome to put numbers in here. But again, just based on habit and based on, me experience and whatnot, the symbols is a lot more visual to me, at least. And I'll explain that here in a little bit. So strong is just going to be a dot, medium is an empty dot, so to speak, or just a circle, and a weak is going to be an inverse triangle. The weight here is 9, 3, and 1, and as you can see, as I'm moving and I'm selecting the different, this is not formatted the way I wanted it to be. Anyways, I wonder why this is not doing it, but anyways, so this is where you would select all of your different symbols and whatnot. And so what is the relationship between reliability and weight? Is there a strong relationship, a medium relationship, or a weak relationship? Reliability of the machine and the weight of the machine.
Medium.
Medium. Valorie, what do you say?
I say medium as well, but looks like we have a week as well.
Yeah, let me see here. For some reason, the validation. See if this is gonna do it. Yeah, here we go. So here's a medium. Just give me 1 second, y'all. Sorry about that. I thought I had taken care of it. Anyway, so you get the point, so on and so forth. And let me see here. All right. What about low maintenance and weight?
I don't think there's any correlation.
All right. Anyone else?
No correlation.
All right. 2 no correlations. Safety and weight. Is it so the heavier, the safer? Their
No.
correlation?
Medium.
I hear medium. Anyone else? So between a medium and a no correlation, I'll take a medium. Miles per gallon and weight. Do we get better
Yes.
miles per gallon if it's
High correlation.
high correlation? Inexpensive in weight. So the heavier, the more expensive?
Hi. Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. So strong, medium, or weak?
Strong.
Strong. High tech versus weight.
No.
It doesn't
No
matter,
correlation.
right? All right, so I'll leave it blank, or we can just say it's weak. All right, moving on. Reliability and materials. The materials used with the reliability.
High correlation.
Yes. Mhm.
High correlation. Low maintenance and materials.
High correlation.
Okay. Safety and materials.
High correlation.
Okay. Miles per gallon materials.
High correlation.
Okay. Inexpensive in materials.
Medium.
I respectfully disagree. If you want it to be inexpensive, you have to be carefully looking at the type of materials and the cost of materials that you have. So I say it's a strong correlation. Techie and materials.
Say that again. What was the reason?
So in my opinion, there's a strong relationship between the car being inexpensive and the type of materials that you use and the cost of them. So if you want it to be inexpensive, you have to use inexpensive materials. There's a strong correlation there.
Okay, well, now technology is changing where the cost of materials are not as high as compared to the cost of people doing the work.
I'm sorry, Ashok, I could not hear you. Could you please raise
I
your
said
voice?
with the technology going on right now, the cost of materials is comparatively faster dropping than the labor content that is going on, unless it is automated. So most of the cost in product, at least in automotive, is more from an automation standpoint.
Okay.
To improve the productivity as against the material as such. For example, alloy steels can compare to alloy plastics. Plastics are lesser weight, but they are sturdy and reliable as the same as
Right.
alloys.
So what you're saying is the relationship between the car being inexpensive and the materials used is a
medium. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
I'm not gonna argue that then. That's fine. What about techie and materials?
High.
Yeah,
Better?
definitely high.
All right.
As soon as you bring chips into place, chips are high cost.
Yes, totally agreed. Engine size and power. What's the relationship with reliability?
Okay, now I'll have other people speak because I'm speaking a lot.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the engagement. This is why, I mean, everyone is more than welcome to put yourselves off mute and join us in this conversation. But yeah, Ashok, I don't want you to be quiet. You're fine. So Valorie, what do you say?
I think there's a medium.
And Ashok?
Engine size and reliability.
Yes.
knowing my automotive background, it is not no correlation.
And it depends on which manufacturer. So, Toyota is highly reliable no matter what the engine size is, right? Versus, some
Yeah,
other.
that's what I'm saying. Based on my automotive experience, it's not really important.
I totally agree. Low maintenance and engine size and power.
Oh, higher maintenance, bigger the engine size.
Alrighty. Safety and engine size.
High.
So the bigger the engine and the more horsepower, the safer the car is.
Yes.
Valorie, I see the look on your face.
Yeah. Yeah. I just feel kind of the opposite. The bigger the engine size, the faster the speed, the higher probability of recklessness.
So
I
Khalid
have
says
all
it depends.
it depends. I agree with Khalid and with Ashok and Kishore is saying not really. So I want to keep everyone pleased, and I would say just a medium. Okay. Personally, I do not see the relationship. I do not see the relationship where the car will be safer if the engine was bigger or smaller, so on and so forth. MPG, miles per gallon, and engine size. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, the bigger the engine, the lesser the mileage.
Right. Inexpensive and engine size.
Higher the engine size, the expensive it will be.
And techie and engine size.
No relationship.
No relationship. I'll make it weak here. So I don't like to leave blanks. I like to, but whatever.
So one question I have, when you're doing this, somewhere relationship is inverse and somewhere relationship is direct. How do you differentiate between the relationship?
I'm sorry, please repeat that one more time. How do I differentiate between what?
When the relationship is inverse relationship versus a direct relationship. So some places we said higher the engine size, lower the fuel mileage, right? But then we also said higher the cost of the material, more safe it is. So
that's a very good question. What happens is you can actually refer up to the direction of the improvement. So let's say let's say our capability is weight. And then we found that, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. Thank you so much for stopping me, Ashok. I'm trying to get through this exercise as fast as possible before we're out of time. Yes, I did miss a step here on the direction of improvement. So to determine whether it's inverse or not relationship, it's going to have to be based on the direction of your improvement. So let's say I want my weight to be bigger. Again, it's not. I don't know why this is giving me a very hard time today. Let me see here. Reference these guys. All right. So let's say I want the weight to be less weight because I want to improve on the weight and versus all the others based on the direction that you're going. So if I want less weight, what is the relationship with reliability? Then I can make, the annotation here. Does that make sense? So I did that step, and I apologize about that.
Yeah, that could change how you're putting the interaction for the functional requirements for your customer.
I'm sorry, the audio went away a little bit. Say that again.
I said that can change how your symbols would show up in the matrix in the middle. If you're going to reduce the weight, that is your goal, then safety and weight would be very much contrary to each other.
So it'll be a weak relationship. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I apologize. We need to be doing this step here first, and I completely missed that one. I jumped directly into the relationship. So let's back up a little bit. So let's say we want the weight to be less weight. Let's say the materials, we want it to be higher grade materials. Let's say the engine size, we want it to be, let's say we wanted a bigger engine size and horsepower. Cost of production, we want it to be lower. And expected life, we want it to be higher. Dimensions, I personally don't care for the
Doesn't
dimension.
matter.
Yeah, but let's say, they're indifferent, whatever. So yeah, so based on the direction here, this is going to dictate the relationship. So
Right.
if I
Now,
want, let's
one
wait.
thing,
Yes.
one thing I'll also mention is when you're doing the direction of improvement, a QFD can change from country to country, market to market. Because in US, the cars are supposed to be heavier, have bigger engine size. Compared to Japan, it would be lower and smaller engine size. So you cannot just simply say in a corporation, which is a multinational, global organization, the QFD can stay the same across the board.
Absolutely. That's words of wisdom. This is why you can have multiple houses of quality, so to speak, right? So it's all going to depend on the market. And this is why I heavily, encourage organizations to look at their market research from the voice of the customer. And they can build multiple different ones. Totally agreed. And thank you for that. All right. So again, based on the direction of the improvement that we're going, what is the relationship between the customer requirements and the customer importance and the functional requirements? All right. So moving on, we're almost at the end of it. So if I want cost to be lower, what is that relationship with the reliability? Is it gonna be a strong relationship, medium relationship, or weak relationship if the cost is going down? Is it gonna be more reliable, not so reliable, or? Okay, I'm hearing strong. Cost of production and low maintenance. Anyone?
Strong.
Strong. Cost of production and safety. If it's going to cost less in production, it's going to be safer. Okay, I'm hearing strong again. Cost of production in miles per gallon. So there's very weak relationship between cost of production and miles per gallon. Inexpensive and cost of production. I think that's
Strong.
That's a no-brainer. And cost of production and techie. That's also a no-brainer. Expected life, so a couple more. Expected life and reliability. If I want expected life to be higher, is it going to be a strong relationship? Strong. Expected life and low maintenance. I hear weak. Anyone else?
Expected life and low maintenance can
Yeah.
be still a high correlation.
Yeah.
Especially when you're asking for expected life to be higher, you definitely want low cost of ownership. You don't want higher cost of ownership because that can dissuade a person to buy.
So what are you saying, Ashok?
I'm saying if your expected life of a car is going to be higher, that's the direction of improvement you want to make. That would increase the cost of ownership because the maintenance cost will be higher. That can dissuade a customer to not go for that particular model, as against if you want to improve the expected life and reduce the maintenance cost, it would be a delighter for the customer.
Gotcha. So would you say so in your case, what I'm hearing, are you saying it's a weak relationship?
No, it's a strong relationship.
Strong relationship. Okay. What about expected life and safety?
Strong.
Okay. What about expected life in miles per gallon? Strong. Expected life in being inexpensive.
That can be medium, not as critical.
Okay. And expected life in techie?
Same thing. No. Low.
Low. Weak or medium?
I say weak.
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 Compared
All
to
right.
all of the.
Awesome. We're almost at the end of this. So dimensions and reliability. If I don't care for the dimensions, they could be the same. What would that cause? What is the relationship with reliability in this case?
Weak.
Weak. Dimensions and low maintenance.
Weak.
Dimensions and safety.
High.
Weak.
I heard high and weak. Think about it. If the dimensions are bigger or larger, let's say someone is getting into an accident, they're gonna have more room before they can get hit inside the car, right? I personally think medium.
But your direction of improvement is basically you're not going, there's no improvement being done.
There's no improvement, yeah. So you're saying weak?
That's how I would take it. If there's no improvement, then how would you, if you're not making effort to do something, either reduce the capability or increase the capability, how does it matter then?
Okay, I'll go with that. I'm hearing strong from Khalid and Kishore and Josh. You guys, if you
Can
want
they
to put yourself
explain?
off mute and you can explain to us, I'm happy to have this debate. Could you explain to me why you chose strong? And I'm hearing from Ashok it's weak. Any?
Yeah, hi, Elie.
Yes, could you please explain why you told us it's strong?
Actually, I do believe a smaller car would have a lower chance of getting into collision, like smaller area basically.
Right, but we're saying we're not the direction of improvement is indifferent. We're not going neither high or low. So we're not going small car. We're not going bigger car. We're keeping the dimensions the same.
Okay, in that case, it would be weaker.
Okay, are you saying it's going to be weak?
I think that's what I heard.
Okay, sounds good. Moving on.
That's
Dimensions.
why I was saying, that's why I was saying direction of improvement will make a lot of difference between how you correlate the requirements of customer versus the functional.
Correct. I agree. All right, let's make it dimensions and miles per gallon.
Medium.
Dimensions and inexpensive.
No correlation.
No correlation. And dimensions and techie.
No correlation.
No correlation. All right, so this brings us to basically, so I'm sorry, Ashok, when we say no correlation, I personally prefer weak so that we have
weak is
good
fine.
calculations. So,
yeah.
Okay. So this is a 6x6 matrix, so to speak, right? And so as you can see, again, Excel was kind enough to do all the calculations for us. So at the end of the day, what you're really trying to get, this is your key component here, is that to be able to get the relative weight that is basically taking, the symbol that we have here, let's say it's 9, and then multiplying it by the relative weight and add it all throughout. And so you're going to get 387 points based on the points. But then as far as the relative weight, you can see the formula here. And so based on our exercise where, let's say we were, so focused on early on, I guess I can't remember, Valorie, if you said, weight was, not of a high importance, or I can't remember which one was of a higher importance from a functional parameters and whatnot. You can see here, it's very clear that materials is now number one priority we have to focus on at 24%, followed by 22% respectively for cost of production and expected life. Okay, so this here clearly shows you when you are, designing a car, let's say it's an SUV or whatnot, what the customers are looking for versus what your internal capability is. And then the very last thing that we can do here is we can actually do a rating and a benchmarking against all the competition. And so again, you do based on the scale of 0 to or 1 to 5, 1 being low and 5 being high, where does your design stand against the competition? So let's say we're designing an SUV internally. So let's say what we talked about here is an SUV, and I'm gonna compare it with competitor 1. Let's say, I don't know, BMW X5. I'm making up names here, guys. Number 2 here, let's say it's I don't know, throw an SUV at me, a brand.
Toyota.
All right, let's say a Toyota Highlander, and then another one. Give me something that's massive.
I would even go to the extreme end, make it a Toyota Corolla to compare, see the two extremes in the continuum. Where do you stand?
Okay, I hear a Honda Pilot and a Corolla. Let's do that. Instead of a Toyota, let's do a Pilot. I like that. All right. So this again could be captured from surveys or from talking to the customers, or the customers will tell you, the rating based on the competition and whatnot. I highly doubt that the competition is gonna volunteer this information, but there are ways that you can, companies either buy the competition's product and the reverse engineer it or whatnot. I mean, that's been done in the past and whatnot. I'm not sure how okay of a practice that is, but it's, let's all face it, it's been done in the past. And so
you can get it from the different boards that provide ranking.
Yeah, like JD Edwards and
yeah, JD Edwards. Yep.
Yeah, totally agreed. Absolutely. So let's say our product, is here. And so let's rate the other one. So let's say, what is reliability of an X5 on a scale of 1 to 5 from a customer standpoint?
Maybe 5.
I could debate that. To me, it's more of a 3. I don't think it's super reliable. BMW.
One quick question on our product SUV. Why would you copy paste customer importance as the same? Because what you are at least the way I have learned this done is this customer importance is based on what you want in future. Our product current state could be very different than where you are going to be in the future. So what I have seen typically done in this type of exercises, our product current state would be compared to the competitors' products, while the customer importance is something for future that you want after you've made some improvements based on this quality function deployment.
Right. So this is something that's coming directly from the voice of the customer surveys. So
right. For future.
Correct. Yes, correct. And so, I mean,
currently it could be very different. Currently your reliability
give me an example from your end. So let's say we determined here that this is a 5 based on the survey. Yeah, but you're saying currently we're at a, these numbers
yes,
are
I'll give you an example of Hyundai. Hyundai was a company that was 3rd rated in Korea and not considered reliable at all for their products. As they grew the market, they became very reliable, somewhat equivalent to but lower than Toyota from a reliability standpoint, because of their work and effort they put in to make sure that their car has to be reliable. They cannot be considered as low reliable, low cost car. So if I was to consider it from Hyundai standpoint, reliability of customer importance is 5. That's what the customer wants in future. But currently our product is rated as 2. That will help you to compare your current state to the competitor's current state to say, yes, where do I stand and how much importance do I need to do from a customer importance? How much do I need to put in effort from a customer requirement standpoint so my future product meets their requirements rather than current requirements?
I totally agree with this. What I wanted to mention though is that if this is what the customers want, where is the benchmark right now? That's where I'm coming from. But if you would like to take that approach as well, that's fine. I mean, it's multiple different ways.
The benchmark is the highest of each one of those columns. Correct. So if reliability is competitor 1 as 5, well, today currently my reliability is a 1, then I would look at the features of competitor 1 from a reliability standpoint, see what I can do.
Yes, and this is in the case where you have a gap. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I do not know. We're not part of Honda or Toyota, or this is an exercise that is virtual. So this is what I was trying to make it overly simplistic. But yes, I totally agree with your commentary. So let's just move on with that.
Okay,
if anyone has any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer this after the fact. We have roughly about 12 minutes left. So, but Ashok, thank you so much for that kind of feedback, man. This really helps this group a lot and helps me personally as well. So thank you so much for being highly engaged on this session. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Let's just make a quick copy over. But let's say on an X5, how reliable is it? Ashok, what do you think an X5 is? How reliable is it on a scale of 1 to 5?
I have no idea. Sorry.
Okay, Khaled is saying a 4, and Valorie, you said a 5. Personally, I do not agree that BMWs are reliable. But anyways, what about low maintenance?
For Toyota and Honda, I can say 5.
Yes, I totally agree. What about low maintenance? 1 to 5, 1 being low, 5 being high.
Probably like
Yeah.
a 1.
Yeah, Khaled, you must be a BMW fan. Have you ever owned a BMW? Oh my God, I'm never going back. I can tell you that much. Spend so much time on maintenance. If I could give it a 0, I'd give it a 0. It's
The BMW gives you perks that they will get your car from your house, and that's a convenience which helps you to say, I'm going to buy.
please don't take this as I'm bashing one brand over the other. I'm not. I'm just saying I've owned both, and I can tell you when it comes to low maintenance, BMW is very far from being a low maintenance. I personally, I'd give it a 1, but if I hear other numbers, I'll go with Khaled. I'll give it a 3. Here, that's fine. What about safety? 1 to 5. How safe is it? An X5 BMW.
4.
Okay,
I'll be back in a minute.
you got it. Miles per gallon. Please don't tell me a 5.
Like a 2 or 1.
If I give it a 0, I'll give it a 0. But no, in all honesty, I think a 3 is a more. I tell you what, let's meet in the middle. 2.5. Inexpensive.
2.
Yeah. Khaled gave it a 1. Yeah, they're very expensive, but it's the ultimate driving machine. Honestly, there's a reason why they call it the ultimate driving machine. Techie, I think it's very techie, to be honest.
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Honda Pilot. How reliable? 5. Low maintenance. 5. Safety. 5. MPG. One can debate though. 6. Yeah, yes and no. A Pilot is not a Civic or an Accord.
So maybe a 3.
I'd give it a 3. Yeah. Inexpensive. One can debate that they're inexpensive. I would say I'll give it about a 4. And techie, I've seen the newer Honda Pilots. Yeah, they're pretty techie for sure. They're Acura. Acura, which is made from Honda is definitely very techie. I'll give it a 4. All right. And by comparison, a Toyota Corolla, which is an outlier in this case, not technically an SUV. How reliable is it?
5.
And low maintenance.
5.
Safety.
5.
It's very safe, but again, it's a smaller car, so any crash could be. I personally would give it a 4. MPG.
5.
I agree with that. Inexpensive.
5.
And the techie,
It's not as techy.
depending on the model, I'll give it a 3.
Yeah.
So this is your benchmark here. And again, back to Ashok, this is based on current situation versus the the benchmark. And here is the future state based on the customers' surveys and whatnot, what they would like to see in a car design. And really, in a nutshell, guys, we have a few minutes left, but at the end of the day, this is what you're going to be focusing on. And as you can see here, the numbers don't lie. 24% you have to focus on the materials, 22% you have to focus on cost of production, 22% expected life. It does not mean that you're not going to care about dimensions. 4%, very low percentage, but your prioritization is going to be more about the top 3 or top 5, or again, it's based on the agreements that you have with your team and whatnot. And so that's what I wanted to show everyone today. I hope everyone enjoyed this exercise. I can show you the car example that I put together myself. And to your point, Ashok, you can see I have different numbers here because yes, you're right. It's based on current conditions and whatnot, which are not the same as what we saw in the survey. But I color coded those. So it actually, clearly highlights the competition versus what we have. And then you can see here, relative weight I put as, so I'll make this example ready for everyone. And there's also an example about a laptop. More than welcome to look at it and let me know your thoughts on this. With that being said, I'll turn it over to you, Valorie, so we can conclude this session.
Okay, let's see. Let me go back to the case study. Okay, this is a basic review on the do's and don'ts of QFD. I hope you guys found out everything that we talked about earlier about how to use the QFD and using the case study and the conflict of resolution. We went over basically how to manage and control the resolution of any conflict that are happening. And the handoff, Elie did an excellent job giving us quite a bit of information about the handoff, and make sure that the handoff actually starts from the very beginning so that we have all the basic information, and we work it all the way through the whole process of the QFD, so that when we hand it off, which is the most important part of, probably the second most important part of the QFD, besides the customer requests. So this would be the second most important, is that, what happens to our work after we have completed it. And we want to make sure that after we completed it, it's handed off and that it's successfully implemented into the product or process that we are having. And then, the whole element of everything that is happening in the QFD is that we have the people coming together as a team to use the QFD. We have the customer requirements, and those are the people elements that goes towards it. Do you have anything to add to that, Elie?
You pretty much covered it all. This was, a very exciting experience for me. Thank you so much to everyone that joined. Hopefully, again, you can take home some have some key takeaways, basically. And I appreciate you, Valorie. I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to more work in the future.
And so do I, definitely. Now, do we have any last minute questions? I know we answered quite a few questions during this time. Does anybody just raise your hand if you have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat.
I have a question real quick, based on the conversation today. Is anyone interested in a workshop on change management from a culture standpoint? Because that struck me early on that this is something of interest. Maybe we can build a workshop around change management. It's a very hot topic nowadays in organizations, and there's a proper way and a proper methodology to go about change management. Oftentimes people think, change management, changes, incontrollable versus management is very controllable. It's kind of like an oxymoron. It's really not an oxymoron. Change can be managed, and I definitely have a step-by-step guide and a workshop, roughly about an hour and a half, that we can give people if anyone is interested in for future reference.
Like before change management, I think culture, how to tame culture would be more important.
So I call it change management, but it is more about the culture management of change. But yeah, it is a workshop about that talks nothing but change in a culture. And how do you remember how I talked about the direct cycle, and you turn a note and maybe it's a yes. All of that is included in that workshop.
I think there would definitely be a lot of response.
We can always make it up like a poll, maybe put it on LinkedIn and whatnot. I'm just curious to hear what people have to say on the call today, but just food for thought for later on, Valorie.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. No more questions going. Okay. So, Elie?
No, again, much appreciation. Y'all have a great weekend. Thank you so much for those that are staying up late on the Eastern Hemisphere and joining us. Really appreciate that. We do not take it for granted. You could have been doing something else and enjoying your weekend, but you chose to be with us today on the call, and I'm very grateful for that. And Valorie, you've been instrumental. I really appreciate everything.
Well, thank you, Elie. This has been quite enjoyable learning from you the whole time. And we do absolutely appreciate our audience as well, their involvement and their participation, as well as constantly always being involved into our activities that we have. I know some of them have been on here from the very first start. So we do appreciate your time, and we hope that everybody has learned something new from this. We do actually have one last question here from Oki Woodall. I'm so sorry, I'm pronouncing your name. Oakwood Dilly. I hope I got it correctly. Oakwood Dilly.
Get off mute and tell us your name. We don't want to get it all mistaken. Anyway, so what is the question?
So how do we affect change management? Sorry.
That's a whole other workshop, Valerie.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to answer that, but I can tell you there are 5 key ingredients.
Hold on, Elie. His question is more so between operations and maintenance department that see each other as different bodies. So he's kind of talking about how do you do the effective change management when 2 departments are in silo and don't agree to their way of work, is what I'm reading into.
Right, and this is a very good question. That's definitely a segue into a completely different workshop. I can tell you from a very high level, it comes down to the culture, obviously, right, and then having a leader in place that could be able to break down those silos. But that's very high level, and I'm more than happy to share this in a more detailed conversation and possibly a workshop in the future.
Yeah, so look forward to that. We will definitely, I'll write a note to make sure that I personally invite you to that workshop.
Can I share my example?
Absolutely, go ahead.
So in one of my company, that was, I think, first job in US after I moved to that country, was that maintenance department never was focusing on taking care of particular machines that required continuous maintenance. They basically thought about maintenance as something breaks down, then they go and fix the issue and becomes the hero. What I had to do was I had to basically take personal effort to understand what type of failures on the machines were happening. I started talking to the suppliers of the machines because these machines were pretty old, to understand what the maintenance requirements were, from a preventative maintenance to a corrective maintenance. And then I started engaging in those calls with the suppliers of the machines, the maintenance manager, to help him understand what type of engagement is required between the departments. It's not about last minute become glorified because I saved the time for the production to continue the production by putting Band-Aid. Once I was able to engage the maintenance manager, he was able to rally his troops to be able to get something going, especially when I was going in at middle of the night to look at the machine because it stopped. They saw that behavior was very different than other engineers they were working with. And then they started collaborating with me and trying to open up things that they were finding difficult to manage because of their own constraints, which I was able to negotiate and get them taken care of. So that was the way I broke down those silos, especially on the specific lines. This was an automotive company that I was working for, and it helped me to break those silos down.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Ashok. And hopefully that answers your question. You know, in the short term, Akwadili, you know, more than happy to discuss this at length at a later time.
Okay, and here's my contact information, and you're welcome to contact me. And that concludes our presentation. We want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you so much for being involved.
Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Elie. Thank you, everybody else who joined.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.